Good morning, folks. 9th of October, Sunday morning, a little after 10 o'clock. This video was prompted because of the Facebook discussions. And probably the most important thing I need to convey to Americans today is the importance of the Ukraine. Most of y'all do not know why the Ukraine is so important and what it really, truly stands for. So hopefully I'll stay on subject. So I pray to Creator, Father God, Yahweh, give me the strength to stay on task, to tell you what He wants me to tell you, the message He wants you to hear. Because you need to hear it. This is very important. All right, let's begin. First, I'm going to refer you to two other videos on the internet. One by Cliff High, in which he goes, well, there's actually a couple of them, but he goes into details about the character of the Khazarian mafia, and Cliff speaks a little bit more earthy than I do, and he'll give you a better idea of the full color of the character of Khazaria. It's very important you know that. It's a very important video. Now, another one was by Preston James, Dr. James, I believe it is, the psychologist at Veterans Today. And his is much more academic, very important. You need to watch that one as well. It'll give you a broader scope. Now, what you're going to get from me is you're going to get the biblical parts of it. You're going to get the psychological parts of it. And you're going to get the nuclear aspects of this thing. And the severe danger. Oh, also you're going to get Big Pharma. Big Pharma has got their headquarters. All of those pharmaceutical companies, from what I understand, and if you know of anything different, correct me in the comments, please. My understanding is every one of them has their headquarters in ancient Khazaria, which would be the Ukraine. Ancient Khazaria was larger than the Ukraine. It encompassed quite a bit of Russia as well. It was the biggest country in the area, and it was very important. And you need to understand where they come from and what the hell's going on with us and with them. So it's not simply the Ukraine. It's not simply the border of Russia. This buffer zone that has been for a long time. The Ukraine really is ancient Khazaria, and in case you don't agree with me and you don't understand the importance of that, I beg you to just say some prayers for me that I get to stay on subject and I get this all across to you. The president of the Ukraine, this alleged president, he was put in there by our people who did a revolution in 2014 and screwed up the Ukraine, took it away from the people, deprived the Ukrainians of their true rights and will. Yeah, Barack Hussein Obama, who's half Muslim, half Jew. I don't care what he is, half black, half white, half Jew, whatever he is. He belongs in prison for what he did to this country and set us up for. So, Khazaria existed until about 1100 AD, at which point the neighbors got so upset with the Khazarians, fed up with them, that they drove them off. And primarily it was the Russians and the Belarus that went after them. I could be wrong about that. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. And when they drove the Khazarians off, the Khazarians went west. They went into Poland and into Lithuania and throughout the rest of the world. And for the most part, we know them as the Ashkenazi Jews. Now, before you go broad brush painting the Jews with one stroke, it's not going to hold water. As my Jewish mother, adopted Jewish mother, told me, if the people really wanted to do the Jews in, they'd just leave us alone and we'd fight among ourselves and we'd kill each other off, because there's different Jews. Okay, the Khazarians loved war. They were a sociopathic culture, and they also had some weird religions that were sexually oriented. There was a bunch of sexual religions that came out of Mesopotamia. The Petar priests, Petar being Petar, which is kind of an abbreviation for the penis priests, of which the most famous one is in the book of Acts. And his name was Simon, Simon the sorcerer, who, by the way, was also called Simon Petar, Petar, to distinguish him from the real apostle Simon Peter, Peter. And it was Simon Peter never made it to Rome. Simon Petar is the one they built that Roman Catholic Church on, and he talked them into believing that he wasn't worthy to be crucified upright. So he talked them into crucifying him upside down, so he would expire much quicker, he would lose consciousness and not suffer so much. So what I want you to do is I want you to understand that the Ukraine is fighting under the old banners, the old symbols of Khazaria. And that president of the Ukraine, that Jewish guy, Zelensky, that con artist, actually went as far as to give his last address in front of a flag from Khazaria. It's an interesting symbol, an interesting banner. Looks like a couple of flying wings or dragon's wings, or it's sort of an abstract drawing, and that's the banner. And there's a specific name for it. I haven't learned it. It's out there. Go ahead and learn it. And that's what they marched and fought under. And that's what the Ukraine is fighting under. And if you look at the unit patches for those paramilitary groups, they've got the same ancient symbol of Khazaria embedded on every one of their unit patches. And those are claimed to be paramilitary. They're not government military. Oh, hell yes. They're part of that central government over there. Now, in case you're wondering, we're about to see nukes off in the Ukraine. There's a good chance of it. Putin has ordered the brigade forward that controls their nuclear weapons. They'll be tactical nukes. And the problem is that most of you think we have to respond to that. I don't think so. I don't think so. And as a matter of fact, if you looked and studied and read the Bible and you watched those videos and fully informed yourself about the Khazarians, you would say good riddance. Because Khazaria, the Ukraine, is basically the seat of the enemy of mankind. It wasn't there forever. Satan's seat was in Palmyra. I think that's how you say it. Down near Baalbek. It was just north of Israel. And it got moved. What you need to know is the full story of the Bible. And I mean the full story, meaning what happened in the Garden of Eden. And the key, crucial figure in it was Esau. Esau sold his inheritance for a bowl of red lentils, red porridge. The word for red was Edom. Thereafter, he was known as Edom. Esau settled at Mount Seir in the southern part of Israel. Esau was Jacob, Israel. Jacob became named Israel after he wrestled all night on the banks of the Jordan River with God. And he prevailed. And he was renamed Israel, he who rules with God. Notice he didn't beat God. There's some questions whether or not Yahweh played fair in that wrestling match, but go read the Bible. It's quite a story. It's very simple. His brother went to Mount Seir, where he settled at. And you need to understand that their culture was kind of backwards compared to the Israelite culture as a whole. In the Israelite culture, it was a patriarchy. In the Edomite culture, it was a matriarchy. The Israelite culture, the law was you couldn't put a man to be king over you who was not your brother. In other words, it had to be a fellow Israelite. Whereas the Edomites loved and trusted each other so doggone much that their law was they had to choose an outsider to be king over them. That's how much they trusted each other. They didn't trust each other at all. The Edomites stayed at Mount Seir, also known as Mount Edom, until about 700 AD. And then they migrated up to Khazaria because they heard that the chieftain for the Khazarians had converted to Judaism, and he required his leading nobles to convert to Judaism along with him. He chose Judaism because he was in the middle of the world, in the middle between Catholics, if you will, and Muslims on the other side. And of course, those were warring factions, and if he joined one side or the other side would go after him. And he decided, since he saw that the Jews got along with everybody, because the Jewish merchants that went through his country got along with everybody and were able to travel freely, that he would convert to Judaism. And so when that happened, the people at large weren't required to convert to Judaism, but the nobles were. And so they dutifully did what their chieftain wanted, and they converted. And the Edomites from Mount Seir migrated up to help them with their newfound religion. So they were converts. They weren't Israelites. They weren't descendants of Israel the man. They weren't anywhere near the seed stock of ancient Israel. They were Turkish Mongolian, a mix, if you will. And when the Edomites went up, they took their seed with them. It was a mix as well. You see, Edom took 2 Canaanite women to wife. And then he repented in great tears because he realized what he had done. He had written himself out of the family of Yahweh. He was disinherited. And it's in the Bible 5 times. Do not intermarry with the people of the land. Do not take the Canaanite daughters for wives for your sons. Don't give your daughters to be wives for their sons. Don't intermarry. Why was that? Canaanites were descendants of Cain. Who was Cain? Cain was Abel's half-brother. And in the garden, Cain was the product of the illicit union, we'll call it illicit, between Eve and a fallen angel named Gadriel. She complained to Yahweh Father that she was seduced. We don't have... Shh, quiet, quiet. Good girl. It's okay. It's just the neighbor getting in the car. We don't have good data on it. We don't understand the act fully, certainly not from just the biblical account alone. What we do know is that Cain was the product of that offspring, and he was half Adamic DNA from Eve, his mother, and half fallen satanic DNA from Gadriel, the fallen angel, his father. And he murdered his half-brother Abel. Abel was full Adamic. He was Adamic from his father Adam and his mother Eve. He was murdered. Cain got jealous and bashed his brains out in the field with a rock. And when Cain was kicked out of the garden, his complaint to Yahweh was, "Where will I go? They'll kill me out there." Oh, you mean there are people out there? Yes, there were humanoids out there. There were Mongoloids in particular. And we have this in the Bible that Cain went east to the land of Nod, which is the land of wanderers. So he built cities and he took wives from the Mongolians. So Cain's immediate first level of children would have been half Mongoloid from his wives, 1/4 Adamic from Eve, who would have been the grandmother, and 1/4 Satanic from Gadriel, the fallen angel. One of the 5 leaders of the fallen angels, I might add, and there were 200 fallen angels at Mount Hermon that conspired. It's important that you understand this history. So basically, the evil that was dealt with in the attempt to destroy it during Noah's flood were these admixtures, because these angels, these 200 angels, had gone into all of the daughters of men they wanted and took them wives. And there's more to that, for sure. We don't have that much good data in the Bible, unfortunately. But you need to understand the Bible. It's the yardstick, and it's the standard by which you will measure the veracity, the truthfulness of other accounts and other books. So in 700 AD, the Edomites migrated up to Khazaria, and so part of the Khazarians, not all of them, were intermingled with this fallen angelic satanic DNA. Not all of them. Very few, as a matter of fact. Think of the logic and look at the numbers and think about it. It would not be that much. Now you're going to say, well, what's the big deal with the Edomites? I mean, isn't diversity our strength? No, not this. Not this. I think that God made it very clear in the early parts of the Bible. He made us the way He loved us, the way He wanted us, and He said it was good. Every time He said it was good. So I think all of what He made was good. It was the fallen angels that spoiled things, that screwed things up. And in case you ladies are wondering, stop blaming the men. And in case you men are wondering, stop blaming the women. The original sin really wasn't committed by Adam or by Eve. It was perpetrated by the fallen angels, by Gadriel in particular. So lay the original seat at the feet of the fallen angel where it belongs. In case you don't believe me, go on the internet, Google the name Gadriel, Gadreel, and you'll come up with Wikipedia's entry explaining Gadriel to you. It is from the name Gadriel that we get Gad, which was abbreviated to God. And so we have God throughout the Bible, and most people don't realize that the bad guys slipped in there, the nickname for the fallen satanic angel. So if you hear that God was the devil, that's probably the basis for it. Now you know the details. You need to know that his real name was Yahweh. Okay? Yahweh decided to have a family on the earth, and he started his family. And that was Adam and Eve, his children. And the devil decided he wanted to become part of the family because he wanted to be like God. So he decided to set up this intermarriage thing to steal us of our inheritance. And so far, he's done a good job of stealing from us. That's my coffee, I know. I got friends who drink it black, and they look at me and go, oh boy, sorry, this is the way I like it. It's not quite sweet enough for me, but I'm going to leave it the way it is because I'm getting too fat anyway. Been exercising, trying to put on muscle. Okay, so let's talk about the importance of the Edomites. In the Bible, there was a fellow called Herod the Great. He wasn't described as an Edomite in our Bible, which came from the Greek, unfortunately, because it wasn't originally in the Greek. It was in the Aramaic. As near as I can tell now, I could be wrong about the New Testament. Correct me if I am. I mean, there's got to be some scholars out there who, please do correct me if I'm wrong. Herod the Great was an Idumean. Idumean is the Greek word for Edomite. And so the important thing is that by the time Yahshua, that's his real name, Yahshua the Messiah, it's not Jesus, it's Yahshua. By the time he came about, was born, Herod the Great was the governor of Israel under the Roman Empire. So we can see that the Edomites had risen to power in Israel. By the time Yahshua was walking the planet, Herod the Great was there. And when Yahshua was 2 years of age, Herod the Great, the Idumean, Edomite, ordered the slaying of all boys 2 years of age and under, because he didn't want the competition of the King of the Jews. Now, hold on to that King of the Jews thing, because it's not that religion that those guys practice. Yahshua was not a Jew. He didn't practice that faith. He was from the country Judea, so he could be called a Jew in that aspect. And I know that most of my brothers and sisters in Christ, to use that term, which is in the Bible one time, and I just produced a video admitting my error on that. Is really the Messiah rather than the Christ. I believe the Christ refers to the method of death, being hung from a tree, a cross. Not too good. Crucified. I don't like celebrating that. The real Christian symbol, according to a dear friend of mine from college, should be the stone rolled away from the tomb, from the entrance of the tomb. By the way, 16 tons, 32,000 pounds. Tennessee Ernie Williams, sang that song about you move 16 tons and what do you get? So he's talking about moving that 16 tons stone lid off the tomb of Yeshua. Herod the Great was an Idumean, an Edomite. In 148 BC, there was a revolt called the Maccabean Revolt. It lasted for about 5 years, and at the end of that, in approximately 143 BC, John Hyrcanus was victorious. He prevailed. And he basically prevailed against the Edomites at Mount Seir. And he told them, and he made a bad mistake in my opinion, he told them, you'll either get circumcised, great, adult men getting circumcised, that's got to be a lot of fun, and you'll convert to Judaism, the faith that came out of Babylon, that did not exist before the Babylonian captivity, and you'll worship the one true God, or I'm going to kill you. That was the offer. So you can bet they converted. And 150 years later, less than 150 years later, the Edomites were in charge of the place. So you need to understand that. You really absolutely need to understand that. Another thing which I think is very important, that these people up in ancient Khazaria were identity thieves. They loved hosting people. They'd invite the wanderer who was traveling through their lands, the merchants, and they would wine and dine them and drug their asses and then kill them. But not before they learned everything they could about them, so that they could steal their identity and carry on the journey pretending that they were these individuals that came through the country. And that's what they did. And you need to understand the key feature of that is they majored in poisons and concoctions, in drugs and dope, in big pharma. So that's why big pharma comes out of the Ukraine, out of Khazaria. Pharmacopoeia is the word in the Greek New Testament. And if you look that up, you'll see it's pharmacy, sorcery. They did all of that stuff. And so right now, as far as I'm concerned, I think that Putin has got grounds to go ahead and nuke the Ukraine. You say, well, how can you say that? Well, the Ukrainians have been screwing things up, and they are actually it would be a service to the world at this point. If we could get the word out, if people understood the presentation that you now understand, and go to those other two videos. I want you to enlarge your knowledge base, enlarge what you know about this. Go look up Cliff High's video on these folks. Go look up Veterans Today and look that up as well. So the Ukraine is the greatest threat to mankind right now, and they're going to start this nuclear war based on it. I don't like that very much. By the way, Bibi Netanyahu and the president of the Ukraine and the oligarch behind the president of the Ukraine are all trying to make this the new Israel. And they plan to build a city called the New Jerusalem there. Basically what they are is they're reclaiming their original homelands. See that guy Bibi Netanyahu? It's not his real name. These are name changers. These are identity thieves. I don't remember his name. But his real country of origin was Poland. And before that, I'm willing to bet you that his family came from ancient Khazaria. So he's actually trying to recover his original homelands, No, Israel is not their original homeland. They stole that. As far as I'm concerned, they stole that with their terrorism. They stole that with a combination of things, including the world wars. They set those world wars up so they could rule things. And by the way, now we get to see how they're starting another world war. So, how do we get our country back? How do you propose we get our country back? We can't do it at the ballot box. They won't allow us to vote for our freedom anymore. They give us the wrong people to elect. Almost every one of these congressmen, senators, and presidents are Israel firsters. Even Trump was an Israel firster. Biden's an Israel firster. All of these folks were bought into Israel. They put Israel above the United States of America. It's more important than America is to those presidents. The only president who was good in my lifetime they killed, and it's taken several presidents to cover up the assassination. They killed Kennedy. Kennedy was going against them. A week before Kennedy's death, he talked about secret societies. He talked about their methods. And sure as hell they got him. They killed him. Folks, we're in real trouble. Ukraine represents the greatest threat to all life on the earth, not just to white people. Although you'll hear the FBI talk about white supremacism being the #1 problem, I can assure you that the FBI supports the white genocide. That's exactly what they want. And you black folks out there that think, well, that's all right because we're not white. I got news for you. Most of you got a little bit of Caucasian in you. Not only that, but you got a little bit of Israelite in you too. Sadly, some of you got some Edomite in you. It's the same way for us. We're all mixed today across the whole planet. Nobody knows what they are. But you can bet that the bankers are Edomites. They're Khazarians. You can bet that the Khazarians run Western civilization today. They have people in high places and everything. Almost every appointee of the Biden administration was a Khazarian, and most of the appointees for the Trump administration were Khazarians. And in case you're wondering, I have an acquaintance, somewhat of a friend. We didn't get to meet yet. I hope it happens. It's got to happen this summer. And he's part Jewish. His mother was Jewish, so technically he's a Jew. And he was extremely high up in the military and in our government. And he was put forward by the Reagan administration for 4 different assistant secretaryships. This guy was the real deal. He was declined for all 4. Guess who declined him? Well, another fellow Jew took him out and told him what happened. Apparently it was all Jews making the approvals. See, I told you they own and run the country today. But these aren't real Jews. These are fake Jews. These are the ones that Revelations 2:9 and 3:9 refers to. That's Yahshua speaking, John the Apostle on the island of Patmos, taking the dictation and writing it down in the book for us. So the other Jews didn't want him there, but this one fellow that was informing him did want him there. So you need to understand that it is the Jews. It's not all the Jews. It's a subset. It's a small group. It's not a very big group. And the other Jews are just ignorant of what's going on. Another good reference for you is the transfer agreement written by Edwin Black. And it basically puts forward how Adolf Hitler may rightly be considered and called the father of modern Israel. You guys in Israel can suck on that one and swallow it because that's quite true. When we read the transfer agreement, we see 2 different groups of Jews vying to represent the Jews worldwide. And we see one group prevailing against the other group. And the group that prevailed were the bad figs. They murdered the good ones. So now you see why my adopted Jewish mother's philosophy is absolutely correct. Leave the Jews alone, they'll kill each other off. The problem is that there's a bad group. Bad figs is what Isaiah called them, I think, in the Bible. So, how do we get our country back again, I ask you? I'm going to cover some of that, but right now, you need to understand we're on the verge of nuclear war. The United States has basically blown up Putin's prized bridge. We've also taken out the communications for the trains in Germany to sabotage the German industry. And we've also blown the Nord Stream pipelines to sabotage that as well, which really doesn't help the Germans very much. If I was Germany, I'd be wondering, gee, who are my friends? What side am I really on? Who's on my side? Well, it's all screwed up at this point, and it never would have happened had you all been honest and trustworthy and actually done the due processes of law in 2020. And you know what I'm talking about. And so when you steal an election, it definitely has consequences. And right now we got the dumbest bunch of asses of all in Washington, D.C. As far as I'm concerned, they're all pretty much worthless and all ought to be gotten rid of. I don't even care for some of the guys that you guys worship out there. I certainly don't like Lindsey Graham. I don't care much for Ted Cruz. I want to see the restoration of the Republic. We're going to cover that in another video here shortly. But right now, you need to understand the importance of the Ukraine. And I just covered what you need to know. I haven't gone into depth very far. May Yahweh bless you. May Yahweh bless these United States of America. Good day.